Coming in at number 5, we've got the haunted Roshdy building. Every city seems to have a building like this, but not all of them end up condemned in the same fashion. You know the ones, apartments and hotels so full of ghost stories and phantoms that no sane person would go near it. Children tell their friends the stories, and adults stay pretty hush as to not attract suspicion. And of course, there's always an urban explorer or two who are willing to brave the unknown for a thrill. The haunted Roshdy building is an old apartment complex in Alexandria. Some call it the Jinn apartment, because it's full of spirits. For the past 5 decades, it has been boarded up and shut down completely. Nobody in or out. There's even big tarps covering the outer facade, adding to the ghastly silhouette. What should be an average apartment building is now a thing of legend. It's been locked up so long, though, it's hard to say whether the building is actually haunted or if it was just some over-superstitious thought from over half a century ago. Nobody knows why the ghostly qualities are the way they are, but there are many theories. Back when it was a functioning apartment building, the tenants would experience all sorts of craziness. One tale is of an apartment dweller who turned their taps on one day and found a nasty surprise. Instead of water flowing forth from the faucet, bright red blood poured into the drain. Others claimed to hear the sounds of screaming throughout the day and night. Some heard pained men, and others said they could hear terrified women scream. It's speculated that these cries come from the ghosts of laborers who were mistreated or even tortured by their supervisors. In the end, there's no solid proof of any of this happening, but I don't see anyone venturing into this old building anytime soon. But hey, if you're a skeptic, why not go grab some footage, eh? Coming in at number 4, we've got Abu Rega Masluka. The classic boogeyman stand-in. Every culture's got one of these. Western culture has the boogeyman himself, Spanish culture has El Coco, Britain has Spring-Heeled Jack, and Egypt has Abu Rega Masluka. This monster is a favorite of parents everywhere. Those raising young children often lean on this monster in order to keep their little squires in line. The tale of the boogeyman is a classic, an unknowable, non-specific monster who will come and take you away if you're not behaving. The Egyptian version is extra terrifying though, because his body is totally burned all over. Kinda like Freddy Krueger minus the stripes and the claw. Just as willing to teleport around and haunt dreams though. Apparently he is made from the remains of a child who didn't listen to his parents and ended up being burned alive by accident. Often if a child is acting up, their parents will tell you, "Smarten up," or he'll come and get you. This is usually enough to scare the little rapscallion stiff. See, if they don't clean up their act, this terrifying legend will notice, and once you've caught his attention, there is no going back. Later that night, he'll slink through the darkness to the child's room. Maybe the smell of charred flesh will alert the kid to his presence, or maybe the sound of him shuffling in the night. Either way, it's curtains. Abu Rega Masluka loves to steal these little misbehaving miscreants and boil them for supper. So listen to your parents, kids, or this urban legend will make a bubbling soup out of you. Coming in at number 3, we've got El Nadaha. Another classic legend would be that of the siren. Beautiful women who dwell in bodies of water, singing bewitching songs and luring men to their death. They manage to prey on the fear of men and women alike. Men who are afraid that they'll be bewitched and end up dead, and women who fear that evil seductresses will lure their husbands and sons away. El Nadaha is a uniquely Egyptian take on this monstrous melody maker. Originating from the Nile Delta, people who walked along the river would claim that they saw a mysterious, beautiful woman in the bushes or the nearby fields. During the day, she dwells in her underwater cavern, but at night she ascends to the surface and searches for victims. She'll call out a man's name, chanting it over and over, which more often than not will lure her chosen prey to his doom. No matter what he's doing, he'll drop everything and walk over to El Nadaha in a trance. This usually results in him walking straight into the river until he drowns. Forget swimming, he'll be too distracted by the siren song. But wait, there's more. Some say that El Nadaha sometimes falls in love with the man that she's calling. When this happens, she'll take him down to the underworld and marry him. For a while, they live in marital bliss, whatever that means in an underwater cavern, but invariably she'll kill her husband. After committing matricide, she'll bury his bones in her cavern to ensure that her secrets never make it out to the world at large. What do you think? Worth it? Coming in at number 2, we've got El Silawa. Originally from the times of the pharaohs, these wolf-jackal-fox hybrids have many stories to their name. They're said to live in the mountains, deserts, and other remote places of Egypt. It's not often that one will come across this majestic beast. This is for the best though, as they have no problem attacking and eating people who act in ways they deem unacceptable. Back in ancient Egypt, they were said to attack anyone who attempted to trespass in a temple or graveyard. The legend evolved over the years and took on a new form in modern times. It's said there was a man who accidentally married El Silawa. He lived with his wife and her sister, and every night they would leave the house for a strange period of time. Little did he know that his wife was actually transforming into this beast and heading out to dig up graves. Her sister would help her find human remains to eat in order to satisfy her hunger without killing anyone. The man ended up following the duo one night and learned their terrible secret. Thankfully, the wife spared his life for the sake of their children and soon after disappeared forever. Some say that she's still out there, digging up graves and attacking those who would trespass on holy land. Around 20 years ago, people in New Cairo reported seeing a creature like El Salawa and were so scared that they wouldn't go outside after dark. I wonder how those kids are doing. And finally, at number 1, we've got El Ghoul. Ghosts, goblins, and of course, ghouls. If you've ever read or watched Tokyo Ghoul, you'll actually have a pretty good idea of what to expect here. Humanoid creatures with one red eye who love to feast on human flesh. Often these beasts can transform into other creatures, usually taking the form of vicious animals or bloodthirsty devils. They hunt the streets at night, searching for their next unlucky victim. Sure, you can kill ghouls, but it takes a lot of effort. They have superhuman strength and agility, and even if you do land a blow on them, you have to be careful. Often when a ghoul is struck with a sword, they will beg for you to hit them again. They claim that this is to put them out of their misery. Any experienced ghoul slayer will know better though. If you strike a ghoul with one deadly blow, it will die. But if you go back and hit it again, it will come back to life and eat you. Double tap does not apply here. Knowledge is power, right? Although I would imagine it would be hard to resist going all out on a beast that ate one of your comrades. Fighting monsters is serious business. I think the big takeaway from all these urban legends is don't go out at night. I mean, fair, but nighttime is just so fun.
Coming in at number 5, Ghost Taxi. Back in 2011, Japan was struck by a 9.0 to 9.1 magnitude earthquake. It was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan and the 4th most powerful earthquake in the world since modern record keeping began in 1900. The earthquake triggered powerful tsunami waves that may have reached heights up to 40.5 meters, which is absolutely terrifying. Now, a few years after this catastrophic event, stories of ghosts, specifically ghost taxis, began circulating in areas that were directly affected by the tsunami. However, this isn't new. According to reports, many Tokyoites have been telling stories about spectral passengers since way back when. One common legend is of pedestrians hailing down taxis and asking to be taken to Ayama Cemetery. When they arrive, the driver tells them the price and turns around to collect the fare, but there's no one in the back seat. Very spooky. Now, this legend may have some merit. As it turns out, the opening of the Chiada line in the late 1960s brought on some interesting problems as it ran directly under the cemetery. Now, the legend goes that some of these souls got lost on the trains and they're attempting to get back home via these ghost taxis. It's actually pretty sad. Coming in at number 4, the Mujina of Akasaka Road. This is a legend popular among students who have taken a history class nearby Sophia University. Kino Kunai Saka is a hill running past Akasaka Palace towards Akasaka stations and serves as the setting for this dark and haunting legend. I quote, "A man hears wailing while walking down the slope at night and sees a beautiful girl, dressed as if she is from a wealthy family, weeping on the banks of the moat. The man stops to ask her if she's okay and to console her, but the girl continues to weep while hiding her face behind one of the long sleeves of her kimono. While he keeps on pleading with the girl to stop crying, she slowly rises up with her back turned to him and then turns towards him and wipes her face with her hands, as if to wipe away tears. But it turns out she has no face, just a blank slate where eyes, nose and mouth should be. The man screams in fear and runs up the hill as fast as he can, away from the scene, not stopping to look back. He spots a lantern far up the road. Exalted, he runs towards it, although it turns out to be a lonely sober cellar rather than a dwelling. Upon reaching the cellar, he drops to the floor and breathlessly tries to explain what he just saw. The sober cellar replies, rather unsympathetically, "Was it something like this?" and waves a hand across his face, after which all his features disappear, and the entire area becomes dark. Now, there is a name for these faceless creatures. They are referred to as Nopero Bo, or faceless ghost, which are Japanese yokai that look like a human but have no face at all. They are primarily known for frightening humans, but are usually otherwise harmless. They will appear at first as ordinary people before causing their features to disappear. Coming in at number 3, Yotsuya Kaiden. Yotsuya Kaiden is a haunting story of Oiwa and Tamiya Lemon, and is about betrayal, murder, and ghostly revenge, making it one of Japan's and Tokyo's most famous ghost stories of all time. The legend itself is based loosely on 2 historical characters, with it depicting a woman, Oiwa, who is gradually poisoned by her husband due to the fact that she is having an extramarital affair. It is said that he presents the poison to her via face cream, which slowly eats away at her face, resulting in her having a lopsided and drooping appearance. Now, here's where the legend varies depending on which version of the story you are hearing. But it is said that Oiwa either accidentally cuts her throat and curses Tamiya's name while dying, or she is killed by Tamiya himself, or even dies of natural causes. Regardless of the cause of death, she comes back to haunt him when he marries the woman he had an affair with. It is also stated that when Tamiya weds his new wife, he lifts up the veil of his new bride. Oiwa's face appears instead. In shock and out of fear, he attacks her with his sword, halting the apparitions, but ultimately revealing that he has just killed his new bride. It is said that this may be based on two real-life murders, ultimately combining fact and fiction. The first involved two servants who had murdered their respective masters. They were caught and executed on the same day. The second murder was from a samurai who discovered his concubine was having an affair with a servant. The samurai had the faithless concubine and servant nailed to a wooden board and thrown into the Kanda River. Coming in at number 2, Akamanto/Red Cape. Akamanto, or the Red Cape, is a Japanese urban legend about a masked spirit who wears a red cloak and who is said to appear to people using toilets in public or school bathrooms. Accounts of course vary, but one consistent element of the story is that the spirit will ask the person in the bathroom a question. In some versions he will ask if they want red paper or blue paper, though other versions state a red cloak or a blue cloak, or a red cape or a blue cape. Regardless of what it is always blue or red, and regardless of the colour, no matter what option is selected, the person will always be killed. Specifically, if the person chooses the red option, they will be lacerated in such a manner that their body will be drenched in their own blood. Lovely. If the person chooses the blue option, the consequences range from that of the person being strangled to all of the person's blood being drained from their body. So what you must do is ignore the spirit, run away, or reject both options in order to survive. However, if an individual attempts to outsmart Akamanto by asking for a different colour of cloak or cape, it is said that they will be dragged to an underworld or hell as a result. Author and folklorist Matthew Meyer has stated that the Akamanto has been recorded as a schoolyard rumour since the 1930s. Also more recently, in the 2003 video game Castlevania Area of Sorrow, an enemy is featured known as Killer Mantle, which may have been based on the Akamanto legend. And finally coming in at number 1, the Curse of Masakado. Taira no Masakado was a samurai in Japan who led one of the largest insurgent forces in the period against the central government of Kyoto. In 939, during the Heian period of Japanese history, Masakado led a minor rebellion which began when Masakado led an attack on the outpost of the central government in Hitachi province, capturing the governor. This resulted in Masakado becoming the new emperor. Over the centuries, Masakado became a demigod of sorts to the locals, with some even feeling the need to appease his malevolent spirit. Masakado ultimately met his end in a rather grisly manner, decapitated. His bodiless head oddly enough managed to be preserved remarkably well until it was eventually buried. Now his grave lies in Tokyo near the Otemachi subway station, and it is said that removing or relocating it has been proven incredibly difficult, with many attempts resulting in those being plagued by misfortune. When the nearby Ministry of Finance tried to level the hill after 1923, 14 workers related to the project started dropping dead like flies from accidents or other bizarre incidents. It is said that the curse still exists to this day, with various stories of people becoming ill or dying after the shrine had been messed with. People have learned their lesson though and rarely touch it. It's even said that desks inside the buildings around the shrine are placed so as to not make anyone sit with their back to Masakado. At 5, La Ciguapa. This is a mythological creature that is commonly described as having human female form with brown or dark blue skin, backward facing feet, and very long smooth hair that covers the body. According to folklore, it is a hypnotic creature that lurks in the highland mountains and deep forests of the island, waiting for the perfect moment to lure men into the woods and make them disappear. Classic. Some people believe that the Ciguapa bring death, and it is said you should not look them in the eye, otherwise you will be at risk of becoming permanently bewitched. They are considered to be magical beings, beautiful in appearance to some but horrendous to others. They are deceitful and hell-bent on capturing a wayward traveller. Now some legends suggest that not all are evil and do not wish to kill, though much evidence supports the benevolent claim. Law states that the only way to truly capture a Ciguapa is by tracking them at night during a full moon, with a black and white polydactylic dog. The Ciguapa also has a similar one-legged version from Colombia, called La Patasolo, who shapeshifts into a skull horse head. Lovely. In at 4, El Sombreron. El Sombreron is a famous legend told in books and film, and is also a boogeyman figure throughout Spanish culture. The figure is known by other names like Cipitio, the Goblin, and Sissimite. However, his characteristics are always the same: a short man with a black dress, a thick belt, a large black hat, and and boots that make a lot of noise when he walks. He is said to ride horses and braid their tails in manes. So sweet, I think. When he cannot find a horse, he will hunt down a dog to braid instead. Now the legend goes that in the neighborhood of La Recolosi lived a woman named Susanna, the daughter of a woman who owned a store. She was known to be pretty with long hair and blue hazelnut eyes. One night when there was a full moon, she was on her balcony admiring the sky when suddenly a short man appeared wearing a big hat and holding a guitar. The girl's beauty had amazed him. He sang her a song, however her parents quickly made her come inside. Since that day she had not been able to sleep because she still hears the man with the guitar. She has not been able to eat because when her food is served it is contaminated with soil. Her worried parents took the young girl to a priest in order to rid her of the entity. A few days later El Sobreron disappeared for good. In at 3, Duende. Duende is a creature from Spanish folklore that has been conceptualized as a mischievous spirit inhabiting a house, often living inside the bedroom walls of young children. They are even known to clip the toenails of unkempt children, often leading to the mistaken removal of an entire toe. Yeah. No fun at all. Now, beliefs about duendes vary from region to region, but some say that they are the souls of infants who died before they could be baptized, whereas others simply portray them as naughty spirits that hide in a person's home and wreak havoc. Duendes became so legendary in Spain that in the 16th century there was even a law that said that anyone who moved into a home only to later realize it was infested with duendes were free to abandon it. Yeah. That's intense. No matter what, most stories about the duende seem to have a special relationship to children, most likely because parents used them as a tactic to scare their kids into doing things. Otherwise the duendes were coming to kidnap them or even eat them if you don't clean your room, eat your dinner, bathe, etc. Coming in at number 2, La Llorona. La Llorona, also known as the Weeping Woman or the Crier, is one of the most famous legends not just in Spanish culture but across the world. This lore states that a woman was abandoned by her husband and was left alone to raise her 2 children. The woman was devastated, so she drowned the boys in a river out of grief and rage. As a result, the woman was condemned to wander for all eternity until she finds the bodies of her children, often causing death and misfortune to those near her. Now, according to the legend, in a rural village lived a young woman named Maria. She came from a poor family but was known around her village for her beauty. One day a wealthy nobleman came to the village, who stopped in his tracks when he saw Maria. He proposed to her and she immediately accepted. The two wed and had 2 sons together. However, the husband was always travelling and when he came home he only paid attention to the children. And as time passed, Maria could tell he was falling out of love with her. She was right, because one day he returned to the village with a younger woman and bid his children farewell. Now this is when Maria drowned her 2 children in blind rage. However, once she realised what she had done, she searched the river for them, but they had already been swept away. Days later she was found dead on the riverbed, having committed the 2 ultimate sins, murder and suicide. Her spirit now haunts the land of the living and the dead, weeping for her children, earning the name La Llorona. She kidnaps wandering children at night, mistaking them for her own, while begging the heavens for forgiveness, while drowning the children she kidnaps. Folks who have claimed to have seen her say she appears at night by rivers or lakes wearing a white or black gown with a veil, and others say that if you hear the cries of La Llorona, you are marked for death. Spooky. There was also a film, I watched it recently. It was utter trash, so hopefully the legend's creepier. Finally coming in at number 1, El Coco. The Coco, also known as the Cuco, Coca, or Cuca, is a mythical ghost monster equivalent to the boogeyman, found in Hispanophone and Lusophone countries. In Spain, Portugal, and Latin America, the legend goes that parents will often invoke the Coco, or Cuca, as a way of discouraging their children from misbehaving. They sing them lullabies or tell frightening rhymes which warn their children of El Coco. If they misbehave or don't obey, El Coco will come and get them, and then eat them. Classic. El Coco is a child eater and a kidnapper. It may devour the child immediately and leave no trace, or it may take the child away to a place of no return. However, it only does that to disobedient children. El Coco is known to lurk on rooftops, on the lookout for misbehaving children. It takes the shape of dark shadows and represents the opposite of a guardian angel, with the El Coco frequently compared to the devil. Now, one of the oldest known rhymes about the Coco originated from the 17th century and went like this, I quote, "Sleep child, sleep now, else Coco comes and will eat you." I mean, straight to the point really. I respect that. Now you could easily draw comparisons between El Coco and the Boogeyman. However, unlike the Boogeyman, Latino parents used Coco to drive the fear of God into their children. Now another legend has it that El Coco is Francisco Ortega. At the beginning of the 20th century, Ortega was so desperate to find a cure for his tuberculosis that he visited a curandera. He was told to drink the blood of children, so he kidnapped a 7-year-old boy named Bernardo. However, I have my doubts about this considering the original Coco rhyme predates the Ortega legend. What do you guys think though? And at number 5 we have the Beast of Hackney Marshes. This legend dates back to 1981 when 4 kids were crossing the marshes on a winter's morning. It is said that they happened upon, I quote, a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. Naturally, people began to assume that this was some kind of hideous monster. It remained a legend going forward, but wasn't spotted again until 2012 when it was captured on camera. Helen Murray, a university student, was out for a stroll near the dense woodland area when she said she was stopped in her tracks by an unknown animal, which she stated was larger than a person and covered in shaggy black fur. I quote, I tried to stay calm as I wasn't sure what kind of animal it was or if it was even alive. I had my phone ready to call 999, then the creature moved. Somehow I managed to take a couple of pictures before I ran. I managed to get away but was scared half to death. Now, she didn't contact the police because she feared they wouldn't believe her. However, the story certainly revived memories of the unexplained sighting that occurred in 81. Officers have stated that they believe neither of these sightings were hoaxes and that 2 bear carcasses had previously been found nearby in the River Lee, and to this day it remains a mystery how they even got there. So, were the bears killed by this creature? Were the bears the creature? We don't have bears in England, so stumped. In at number 4, the Killer Pool in Epping Forest. Epping Forest is a 2,400 hectare area of ancient woodland between Epping in Essex and Forestgate in Greater London. Over 100 lakes and ponds are found in the forest. However, there is only one that is referred to as the Killer or Suicide Pool. This legend grew rapidly in popularity after Irish author Elliot O'Donnell wrote about it in his book Haunted Britain, stating that there is a pool in Epping Forest that is home to unearthly presences, some miserable and some evil. Now, there is one story about the pool that goes as follows. Around 300 years ago, a couple engaged in a forbidden relationship, meeting secretly at the pond in the forest. However, the girl's father found out about the relationship and in a fit of anger he killed her at the pool. After learning about his girlfriend's death, the lover committed suicide at the very same spot. Following these tragic events, no birds were heard and no animals were ever seen in that area again. The water also became dank, and not dank in a good way, bad dank. On top of that, it is said that people with no inclination went on to commit suicide there, including a woman in 1887 and a young servant, Emma Morgan, who killed herself and her child. Jumping forward to 1959, a competition in a magazine was held to find the exact location of the pool. One writer claimed to know but refused to reveal the details, stating that the place was evil beyond measure. I quote, "The suicide pool is deep in the heart of the forest, far from any road. It is dank, evil and malignant, with an atmosphere unpleasant beyond description. It doubt if the sunshine ever penetrates through the surrounding trees. If it did, it would never lighten the black waters." In at number 3 we have the Ghost of the Grey Lady and Longleat House. Longleat House is an English stately home and the seat of the Marquis of Bath. The house was originally built by Sir John Tyne and was designed mainly by Robert Smithson after Longleat Priory was destroyed by fire in 1567. It took almost 12 years to complete and is often regarded as one of the finest examples of Elizabethan architecture in Britain. Sounds magical, right? Well, it has a dark side, one of deceit and murder. It all began back in 1733, when Lady Louisa married Viscount Weymouth, who owned the Longleat estate. Louisa moved into the home with him, bringing with her a number of her own servants. It was said that she was fond of one of her footmen, who she described as loyal and true. Now, this favoritism wasn't taken well among the other servants, and out of jealousy they told Viscount Weymouth that the footman was having an affair with Louisa, which of course wasn't true. Now, this is where the story gets a little blurry. Some say Weymouth paid someone to push the footman down the stairs, while others say he did it himself. Either way, the footman broke his neck and his body was buried in the cellar. This took a toll on Lady Louisa, who developed pneumonia, which resulted in her death at the young age of 22. According to visitors of Longleat House, you can find a lady dressed in grey creeping along the house's corridors, especially close to the library where the footman died. Coming in at number 2 we have the Beast of Bodmin Moor. The Beast of Bodmin Moor is a phantom cat purported to live in Cornwall, England. The creature is said to be panther-like and black-furred, with it stalking around Bodmin Moor killing livestock. Sightings sightings of the beast were reported back in 1978 after mutilated slain livestock were found in the area. Some people proposed that the beast had escaped from a zoo, and as it was illegal to own one privately, the former owner could not report it to the police. It has been claimed that animal trainer Mary Chipperfield had released 3 pumas into the wild following the closure of her Plymouth Zoo in 1978, and perhaps this is what gave rise to rumours of the beast. Jumping forward to 1995, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food conducted an official investigation, with there being no verifiable evidence of exotic felines loose in Britain, and that instead the livestock could have been killed by indigenous species. However, less than a week after the government report, a boy was walking by the River Fowey when he discovered a large cat skull, measuring about 4 inches long by 7 inches wide. The skull was lacking its lower jaw, but possessed 3 sharp, prominent canines that suggest it may have been a leopard. It was immediately sent to the Natural History Museum in London for verification, with them determining that it was a genuine skull from a young male leopard. And finally, in at number 1 we have Spring-Heeled Jack. Originating from Victoria-era Britain, Spring-Heeled Jack is a character from urban legend that was first supposedly sighted back in 1837. However, over the years more frequent tales have emerged. His name is said to come from his ability to leap over great distances and heights. Not too shabby. The very first sighting of Spring-Heeled Jack came in October of 1837, when a woman named Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill when a tall-coated man leapt from the building into the street. He then grabbed her with his metal claws and kissed her before tearing at her clothes. After her screams were heard, he fled the scene, leaping back into the building he came from. Following the encounter, more accounts occurred, with the most notable being the Alsop case. The Alsop case was one of the most widespread stories about Jack, with it being published in several newspapers. Jane Alsop recalls the moments when she was attacked, stating, "I answered the door of my father's house to a man claiming to be a police officer, who told me to bring a light, claiming, 'We have caught Spring-Heeled Jack here in the lane.' I brought the person a candle and noticed that he wore a large cloak. The moment I had handed him the candle, however, he threw off the cloak and presented a most hideous and frightful appearance, vomiting blue and white flame from his mouth while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. She also reported that he wore a large helmet and that his clothing, which appeared tight-fitting, resembled white oilskin. No one was ever caught and identified as Spring-Heeled Jack, which of course led to numerous theories of his nature and identity. Skeptical investigators have dismissed these stories though and claim Spring-Heeled Jack is a product of mass hysteria, which developed around various stories of a boogeyman and devil. Kicking off with a short one at number 5, we have the Draugen, who is the ghost of a man who died at sea. In one specific iteration, a man fled from a ghost, calling out to the dead to save him. The next day, the cemetery was covered in seaweed and the graves were wide open. Many claim to see the Draugen, huge and covered in seaweed, particularly during storms, where he will skin boats and drown sailors. This dude is no fun at all. I would just say stay away from the ocean, stay away from water in general. That is my motto. Coming in at 4, Myling. This is perhaps one of the most disturbing ghost stories, with Myling telling the tale of unwanted or murdered children. Yeah, nothing fun here. Oftentimes the ghosts are referred to as upbird, meaning that which is outside. The ghosts of these children long to be given a proper burial, so they jump on the back of the first person they meet and demand to be taken to a cemetery. In some cases, the Myling drains power from its human ride, and in others, the human is too weak and dies from exertion. The ghost often takes on human form as it gets closer to the burial ground, and is described as a very large spirit. The root of the Myling is believed to be a response to instances of unexplained deaths of children. Yeah, this one is dark. Sure, that makes sense. Coming in at 3, the sacrificial beggar child. This Swedish legend goes that there was a town called Daland that was inflicted by disease that was wiping out a lot of the population and resulting in many residents fleeing. The townspeople were beside themselves until one day a man from Finland came along with advice on how to stop the disease. He told them that only a sacrifice would put an end to the misery, and explained that they would need to bury a living thing in the ground. The villagers were desperate, so they took his advice. They began the process by burying a rooster alive in the ground, but the act failed to produce any results, so instead they decided to bury an entire goat. However, this also failed. Feeling that they had no other options left, they decided the only sacrifice worthy enough to end the disease would be an actual human being. They set their sights on an orphan boy and offered him bread as bait, which he fell for before dropping into a prepared hole. The villagers began to bury the hapless child who was absolutely terrified and pled with them for mercy, but they continued on. Before long, the deed had been done and the child was left to die. However, some villagers claimed they could hear his cries from beneath the ground, begging for them to release him. Coming in at number 2, the Christmas ghosts. This legend begins with a woman preparing to head to midnight Christmas mass. In order for her and her friend to make it on time, they agreed to wake the other and head out at the same time. Late at night, she thought she heard her friend telling her it was time to leave, so she grabbed some bread that she had baked for later and head out. While en route, she stumbled across 2 witches who wished to murder her on the spot. However, they couldn't harm her because of the cross in her pocket. She didn't think much of it and proceeded to the church, heading quickly inside. As she was sitting, she heard something that utterly terrified her. A voice that told her that she could be killed on the spot, but would be spared because the speaker was her godfather. The voice made it clear that she was in terrible danger. She looked around and quickly realized all of the people gathered in the church were headless. She ran, only to be accosted by a ghostly parishioner, who attempted to grab her by the veil. She escaped, but upon her return she saw the remains of her veil that had been seized by the ghosts, ripped into tiny pieces and distributed amongst the graves that were outside the church. Her mind instantly imagining what could have been if the ghost had grabbed her instead of the veil. And finally, coming in at number 1, Kitta Grau. This legend tells the tale of a very evil woman named Kitta Grau, who was so despicable she apparently knew the devil himself. They were on first name basis, and she was so nasty that even he sometimes feared her. The devil had been attempting to spread discord between a married couple but had failed, resulting in Kitta mocking him, saying that she could easily complete the deed herself. So she did just that, with the devil's encouragement, even promising her a beautiful pair of shoes if she were to succeed. Kitta first went to the wife, informing her that her husband was a wonderful man, but there was evil in his heart. She claimed she needed to shave her husband under his chin to remove the last of the wickedness that resided in him. The woman agreed, believing this would do good. Kitta next went to the husband, where she praised their marriage and the man's wife, but told him that his wife planned to cut his throat. Straight up savagery. He didn't believe it, but became a little paranoid, so one evening while in bed he pretended to be asleep, during which time his wife attempted to carry out her plan of shaving his chin. Her husband of course believed she was trying to kill him. Now don't fret, they didn't kill each other, but it did create the discord the devil was so hoping for, and Kitta Grau ended up earning herself a brand new pair of shoes. Coming in at 5, Drunken Thady and the Bishop's Lady. In Limerick City stands an impressive piece of stonework by the name of Thomond Bridge, which spans the dark waters of the River Shannon. The bridge was built back in 1836 by a pair of designers named James and George Payne, and according to rumours their last name would set the tone of future happenings for years to come. The story surrounding the bridge is that of Drunken Thady and the Bishop's Lady. Thady was the local troublemonger in Sloven, and the lady was the wife of the Bishop of Limerick. However, unbeknownst to her husband, she enjoyed a life of vice when the sun went down. One night while both women were out and about on the bridge, they crossed paths with one another and began to fight, as you do. The Bishop's Lady attempted to push Thady into the river below. However, when she attempted to beg God to forgive her wicked ways and spare her life, the push was unsuccessful. The struggle only ended when the Bishop's Lady fell into the water instead and quickly drowned. Now there are many who say the furious spirit of the Bishop's Lady haunts the Thomond Bridge, ready to pull late night walkers into the water below. However, don't fret, because apparently the Bishop Lady's fingerprints will appear on the stone side of the bridge before she pulls you below, so you have time to run. If you see fingers, run. Not all fingers are good fingers. Coming in at 4, the patron of Gravediggers Pub. The Gravediggers Pub has been standing since 1833 and is named for its original owner, John Kavanagh, who fathered 25 children and has a handful of descendants still alive today. And now the pub is in Glasnevin, which is also known for its cemeteries, both Glasnevin Cemetery and Prospect Cemetery, which lies directly beside the pub, in turn giving it its nickname. Due to this, one long-standing tradition is for patrons to order a pint by shoveling a scoop of graveyard dirt against the outside wall of the pub. So as you would expect, with the pub being so close to the cemetery, it gets a handful of guests that aren't on the same plane as us. One of the pub's most well-known customers is regarded very fondly by the living regulars. The spirit takes the form of an older gentleman in vintage tweed and has been known to appear in the corner of the bar, quietly enjoying a Guinness until he finishes his pint and vanishes from sight. The staff actually encourage those who see him to buy him a pint for the road. In my opinion, they're just trying to take your cash. Coming in at number 3, the Jervis Ghosts. Jervis Street, located in the middle of Dublin city centre, has served as the backdrop for many encounters with the unknown and the world of the dead through their eyes, proving that ghosts can be seen and felt almost anywhere, even on populated high streets. The Jervis Shopping Centre opened back in 1996 and is currently home to over 70 retailers, and surprisingly is a popular destination for many ghost hunters out there. Some history for you. Not everyone may know this, but the shopping centre was actually built on the ground of Jervis Street Hospital, which closed in the 1980s after attending the needs of the sick and dying for almost 300 years. Many of course credit the creepy goings on in Jervis Street area to the restless spirits who died in its wards. In 2008, a newsreader from the radio station Today FM was apparently walking along the busy street outside Jervis Shopping Centre only to be stopped in their tracks by a female voice singing a lullaby close by. Creepy. The newsreader assumed they were hearing things and continued to walk with the lullaby fading out. However, it quickly became louder again as she moved further away. The moment lingered with her to the point that she mentioned it on her talk show, and within minutes the lines were flooded with callers citing similar occurrences. Many workers from the shopping centre claimed to have seen the figure of a woman in an old nurse's uniform wandering between the stores, while others told of fruit being tossed through the air by seemingly no one. One person, while approaching the centre's bathrooms, was eyed by a woman who whispered at them before vanishing into thin air, and several others mentioned having met similar spirits not far from the centre. Sure, that makes sense. Coming in at 2, the moving mother of Ballinspittle. In July 1985, something strange occurred in the village of Ballinspittle, Cork. While travelling home one evening, a local reported seeing a roadside statue of the Virgin Mary moving on its own accord. And while some summed it up to a trick of the light, countless other locals have also reported similar occurrences. People from the village as well as people from abroad flocked to the site where the activity seemed to be occurring, with up to 100,000 people said to have visited Ballinspittle alone. The Catholic Church was of course a little uncertain of the legitimacy of the case, with one bishop outright calling it an illusion. According to a team of psychologists from University Cork though, the vision was the result of staring at stationary objects during the transient light of dusk. Anthropologist Peter Mulholland also said that the visions of the Virgin Mary in Irish culture is simply the result of the population's relationship with religion. However, what the answer is anyone's guess. There's plenty out there who truly believe the Mother of God did appear all over Ireland between July and August of 1985. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Black Cat of Killachy. Back in 1968, Margaret O'Brien and her husband purchased an abandoned home on the outskirts of Dublin City. However, they could have never predicted the events that were soon to unfold. Margaret originally intended to restore the property and turn it into an art centre, so she allowed several workmen to live on site to maintain pace. Soon though, the workmen began to report back to the O'Briens with some disturbing stories. After dark each night, they would hear animal sounds from within the walls of the house, even though they couldn't find any evidence of an infestation. Margaret disregarded their concerns, however she quickly came to learn of the building's strange condition herself. One evening when arriving at the house to speak with the project's lead painter, Margaret was met with more claims of wild animals loose on the property. So this time she agreed to stay the night in order to observe. Walking to her room, she saw for the first time a gargantuan black cat sitting in the middle of the hall,